Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new show on yoga with a very famous and speaker. You heard him twice and you loved his videos, and you have also asked many questions regarding yoga from me. And I'm not an expert in yoga, but I'm also learning like all of you. And so this gentleman's mother was known as a yoga mother, and she taught Kate Winslet and many Hollywood personalities. And he himself will be seen has taken up that mantle, and he's carrying forward his family legacy. So you are learning from a family of yoga gurus. So this gentleman is very famous and also connected to a lot of personalities. And in my humble opinion, he represents the essence of yoga in the modern world. So let's welcome him, Shri Atul Vyasji.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good morning, and I welcome you all on this show.
So, Atulji, before we get started, we were talking, and there are a lot of questions of the students also, and based on last show, and also
Right.
for pranayam, you showed techniques, 12, and you showed some certain numbers that
Right.
how many numbers we should do. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you that question again, and I'll also make my notes based on what you tell us. Uh, how did the word yoga come into existence, and from where is what is the first reference of yoga in the Vedic Shastra?
Well, this started. The history is about 10,000 years old. Yoga was propounded by Lord Shiva. It is said to be propounded by Lord Shiva, and he is said to be have told his wife Parvati about it. And then there was a saint called Narsimhan who was the first to write a treatise on the yoga before Patanjali. And after the Lord Shiva taught 84,000 of poses to his wife, and Narsimhan made a complete treatise of these poses with description. By the time, after some time, they were lost, you know, these his notes and everything. And then Patanjali was born. Patanjali is said to be unborn. He is his name has been derived Patanjali. Path means to fall, girna, and Anjali means this, like joining your hands, palms together. So somebody who fell into the palms was called Patanjali. His mother's name was Gomti, and she was 67 years old, and she used to worship Surya, sun god, and offer him water. And every day she would pray him that please give me son in this birth. And she was 67 years old. And but one day, it is a very common occurrence. Why your prayers are answered and why your prayers are not answered, there is a very simple science behind it. When you pray, whenever you pray, when your mind and your mind and intellect, mind and man or buddhi, mind and intellect are together. I mean, and when you pray, then it is immediately being fulfilled. This is a very complete science. You can try it anywhere. And when mind is separate and intellect is separate, generally they are opposed to each other. Intellect always questions and mind. So then they are not fulfilled. So one day when her mind and intellect were together, she prayed to Lord Sun, and suddenly while she was offering water, a small serpent fall into her hands, and suddenly gradually it becomes a sun. So this is how Patanjali was born, and then he gave the treatise on yoga and everything. Yoga is such a deep science, and uh, the benefits of the asanas were given, and of many asanas we have try to understand what is the reason behind them medically and scientifically. But even there are still many asanas. Ancient sages have said, and people perhaps don't know, that by doing Vrikshasana, tree pose, you can prevent fever. This is an amazing fact. If you daily do tree asana, then you will prevent fever. So such things are there in our ancient yoga, which have not come to the light as on day today. And this is a brief history of yoga till Patanjali, and the Patanjali Yoga Darshanam and all that have started. Then there was Shweta Sharman who started Hatha Yoga. Patanjali, what yoga is basically you can say more on meditation and the poses for meditation. The Shweta Verma, Raman, sorry, I'm sorry, forgetting the name of the, not able to pronounce the name, but he gave the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and Hatha Yoga sequence where you stretch your body. So the basic difference between the Raj Yoga and Hatha Yoga is that yoga is eightfold. They have got 8 steps, you can call it, or 8 organs. So in Hatha Yoga, they give more stress to the first 4, that is Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, and less stress on the later 4. And in the Raj Yoga, they give less stress on the first 4 and more stress on the last 4. So this is the basic difference between the Hatha Yoga and Raj Yoga. Basically, the yoga is the same. So this is a brief history of yoga, and now there are so many yogas. It's all commercialized, but this is the brief history till now, which I've I've told you.
Yeah, some of the people, they ask question, the students, they ask question that why some people call yoga, some people call yoga. Would you like to give us some clarification on that?
See, basically, if you are really a yogi, I mean, if you are a really yoga lover, then you must pronounce it yoga only. Yoga, not yoga. Yoga is a misnomer, and I will say it is, I mean, it's a meaningless word. It does not denote anything. For example, another misnomer is calling a person who is doing yoga, people call them yogis. I am a yogini, I am a yogi. This is so funny and so, I mean, insulting to the yogi and yogini. They have no idea. So this is, people are selling it. This is all because of the commercialization. This has happened. Generally, has to be yoga, and yoga has addition is a misnomer and is meaningless, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Now, another question that comes to our mind is you showed some pranayam. So some people want to know the count again. And also some people would like to know what is the difference between Hatha Yoga and pranayam.
Hatha Yoga and pranayam is a part of Hatha Yoga. There is no difference in Hatha Yoga and pranayam. Hatha Yoga, as I said, the 8 parts of yoga are Yam, Niyam, Asana, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. They are 8 parts, 8 organs you can call it. So pranayam is a part of it. Hatha Yoga, as I said, gives more stress on the first 4 and less stress on the last 4. Excuse me, please. This is pranayam. So pranayam and Hatha Yoga are same, and pranayam is a part of Hatha Yoga. There is no difference in them. Pranayam is a very important part of Hatha Yoga. I must say that.
So there is a lot of movement in bhakti in the US. In most of the because of preaching by various organizations such as ISKCON. So there is a lot of movement on bhakti, and so is that considered part of yoga? You and I know, but I would like to hear from you. Is that considered part of yoga? And also, how when people talk about bhakti, and they see that they are also called yogi, but when you look at the yoga principle, then just now you told us very clearly that pranayam is also part of hatha yoga. So what is the essential difference? Does see, the what we have heard is everything culminates into bhakti, and that's the ultimate stage. So how do you put it in your own way, sir?
No, no, no. Bhakti and see, basically the aim of life is to self-realize yourself, to have the ultimate jnana, the true knowledge. A person who gets true knowledge through yoga is called Yogaruda. So basically, whether you do bhakti or you do karma yoga, they are tools of purifying your consciousness. You know, the basic aim is that when you are doing either bhakti or you are doing karma yoga, nishkam karma and karma with surrendering to the God and a karma in a certain way, desireless karma, then what you are doing is you are stabilizing the prana. When you know how the mind, according to yogic philosophy, the mind originated by the vibration of prana. When prana vibrates, the mind is born. When the mind, such mind goes after the Vishaya Vastus, I mean, these materialistic things, and these materialistic things, and then they create klesha or dukh. I mean, they create problems in life. It creates strife, happiness, unhappiness, sorrow, depression, all blah, blah, blah. So the basic what yoga does is, or bhakti yoga we call it, even Lord Krishna has called it, and karma yoga. Through karma we stabilize prana. Through bhakti we stabilize these prana. How bhakti? When you are concentrating on a Lord, surrendering to that will, when there is only one object in your mind, that concentration when deepens becomes samadhi. So bhakti is a very important part of the. But even when your soul and consciousness is purified, your chitta is purified, then even then you have to have the jnana yoga to get liberated. Jnana will blossom when you are purified. So once after the purification, you need to think and pray Lord, and then only the Lord comes and gives you the knowledge of yourself and your own heart. And in that stage, ultimate stage, there is only thinking of Atma, there are only thoughts of Atma and nothing else. There is no other thought, there is no other desire, there is no other vikshepa is there, and that is jnana, and that stage is called Yogaruda. There is a difference between sannyasa and yogi. Sannyasi has renounced the world, he is desireless, everything, but he still wants moksha. On the other hand, yogi does not want even moksha. That's a basic difference. So, yoga is a very, very advanced thing, and bhakti yoga and karma yoga ultimately leads to, jnana yoga. Without jnana yoga, without the knowledge of the self, I mean, you are limited. Then that advaita doesn't come. In bhakti yoga, there is a duality. In karma yoga, there is a duality. So this duality ends in jnana yoga, where there is oneness. There is a saying, जब आप ही आप पे राज रहा तो और किसी का खौफ नहीं. When there you are only there, then you are only the person. Everything is you. That's the basic concept of Jnana Yoga and liberation. Advaita, what I say.
You touched a very important term called yoga ruda. because most of the yoga ruda is will be yoga ruda, but most of the people when they practice yoga, they do not know the important stages of perfection. So like there is a perfectional stage in the neophyte stage, perfectional stage in the madhyastha stage in the middle, and there is a ultimate perfection which is yoga ruda, or like in Bhagavad Gita it is explained that it becomes a sannyasi in actual practice. So there is some yogi, they are called yogi based on their karma yogi, and you mentioned about Gyan yoga as well. So uh, can you like summarize in terms of stages, what are the different stages which people can look for when they are practicing yoga? And I understand that most of the people start from Ashtanga yoga, which is done with the body.
See, basically in yoga there are two aspects. I mean, I will say three aspects, but spirituality is the main name of yoga. So I will talk about spirituality. Yoga Ruda, when we talk in the terms of spirituality. There is a term called Aruruksha. Aruruksha means a person who is desirous to become a Yoga Ruda, to ultimately realize the highest stage in yoga. So till you are a Yoga Ruda, you are a Aruruksha. And Aruruksha, what happens is that by the vibration of the prana, the mind also oscillates. And the oscillation of mind are called vrittis. Like, I give you an example, like a ship in a sea. Waves are called vritti, ship is called mind. So when the waves are uneven and violent, the ship is tumbling up and down and unstable. When the waves are calmed down, the ship also calms down. So this is the relation between vritti and ship. Therefore, the meaning of yoga chitta vritti nirodha. The chitta is basically the reservoir of the attitudes of mind and heart. So when these vrittis are calmed down, the prana through pranayama and yoga, through yoga and asanas and yama. First, you talk about yama and niyama. We get discipline. Discipline is very, very essential for success of any project. In this discipline, there is a very clear-cut demarcation: what you should eat, how much you should eat, how much, when you should sleep, how much you should sleep, what you should eat, what not you should eat, and what you should do, what not you should do. So these are all do's and don'ts to before starting your journey into yoga. So they have to be followed all along. And then comes asana. You know, all everybody in the world is suffering from schizophrenia. Why I call it schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a disease in which you think what you are not. Similarly, we think ourselves to be this body, but we are not the body. Therefore, we are all suffering from schizophrenia. So, to we start with, as a schizophrenic, we believe this is our body. So when I move my hand like this, I can move the hand. When you do start doing poses, don't go on the flexibility and this and that, the alignment. No, 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 no. You must be very mindful of the object, that when you do any posa, there are certain energies which are flowing into the body. They move in certain direction, and therefore they kill one vritti. Or because vritti is basically it produced by the direction of the energy. When that energy is directed in the opposite direction, the vritti goes away. This is a simple science behind a pose. So you should be more aware of about the pose and the vritti rather than flexibility, architecture, and There is no parameters fixed in the yoga. They say you join your hands. If you can't join it, try. That's the basic approach. But uh, synchronization with breath is very important. So when you are doing asanas, we realize after one asana is said to be mastered, if you can stay in a pose for 2 hours and 57 seconds, sorry, 2 hours and 57 minutes, then that pose is said to be have been mastered by you. I mean, broadly 3 hours. So if you can sit in a pose 3 hours comfortably without any strain or sprain and effortlessly, I will say, then you have said to master that pose. And when you master that pose, what you realize is, oh, I am not the body. The body obeys me. So I am something different from the body who controls this body. So next step, then you realize, okay, now I have realized that when asanas are done, you have mastered the asanas, you realize that you are not the body. Then you say, no, then who am I? The basic question yoga puts, who you are. Back on. So then you say, well, then I am the breath. Well, as long as the breath is running, I am alive. As the moment the breath goes, I am dead. Then you start pranayama. It's a very deep process, slow process, and mastering your breath. What happens is when you start pranayama, you breathe loudly, and the breath is very, it's not subtle, it's very gross. Gradually, with the practice, the breath become very subtle and fine, and gradually, it does not even come out of your nostrils. It is only there in the nose. You are breathing and breathing out, and gradually, still further goes down inside your Agya chakra. You are breathing there. You are not. So the breath becomes finer and finer and finer, and then ultimately you realize that you can live without breath. This was demonstrated to me by the yoga legend B.K.S. Iyengar at the age of, I think he was 90, and he showed me on tape. I've got that recording, that he showed me he had his lungs non-functional. 95% of his lungs were non-functional due to tuberculosis as a child. Only 5% of his lungs were working. He showed me the certificate of US doctors. And then he told me, look at my chest, it's so broad and I'm so healthy. Then he told me to check his breathing. He stopped his breath at the age of 90 for 15 to 20 minutes. I clearly remember. I closed his nostril, I put my fingers in his ears, I checked his mouth, and I mean, whatever I could do, I did my best. I observed his belly and chest and everything. But he was completely still. There was no breathing. Trust me, I am a science student and I knew that he is not breathing. After 15-20 minutes, he came back and there was no, like, as if he's very normal breathing. Then he told me, he taught me how to breathe through other organs. You can breathe through other organs of the body. And he taught me that pranayama. And then he told me that your existence is not dependent on breath. Our existence is not dependent on heart, kidneys. Yoga takes our existence beyond the existence, dependence on these organs. Vital organs, we call them, lungs and that. So then we realize, the yogis realize that you can control your breath, so you cannot be breath. And you can live you can exist still without breathing, so you are not the breath. So you go beyond pranayama. Then you realize, who am I? That question takes you to journey inside, and that is pratyahara. And when you go inside, you realize that, oh, this is there is ahankara, that is myself, jivatma. Oh, this is it. This is how you become you take it to dharana. Oh yes, I am. There is something. My consciousness. I am the. You realize that I am the consciousness, and when you internalize that consciousness, you realize, you come to the next step, dharana. You realize that I am the consciousness, but consciousness with ego, individualistic ego, and then you you realize that you are consciousness. Consciousness is a part of the atma, reflection of the atma. So you realize that you can reach to the atma through consciousness. Then you realize you are a consciousness with ego. Then you meditate on that. Meditate. While meditating, the ego melts. When the ego melts, then your consciousness merges with the universal consciousness. This is a state of samadhi. And when ego is there, you are an individual consciousness, and you are not a universal consciousness. And when that ego melts, your individual consciousness merges into the universal consciousness, and therefore you come to become the realize that you are that's a real yoga addition, where individual consciousness merges added to the universal consciousness, and you become one. This is the science behind what you were asked me.
No, such wonderfully explained, Shadul Vyasji, and I was listening to you very, very attentively just now. And one question which you have, also answered it, and how to become a yoga perfectionist, and what is the advantage of that. One thing I can remember from the Vedic Shastra, it is told by Yamraj that the Ayu is measured in the number of breaths. So every person, when they come to this earth, based on their past karma, they are allotted a certain number of breaths, not years. And that's how when you do yoga, you actually elongate your years. You can, when you control your breath,
Yes,
you are actually you're going to live longer. That is the science behind it. And also the karmana deva netrena dehu jantu rupapadyate. So with this karma is decided by deva, will automatically will come to deva later on, because I see a lot of wealth of knowledge in you which you have learned from your own parampara. My last question to you, and it has come from the audience, is that the when the yoga science is so I would call it a yoga science, and you are the yoga scientist. So when the yoga science is so accurate and perfect, then why does the medical schools and colleges do not emphasize it so much?
who said this is not correct? There is now yoga. See, yoga has always been saying that mind is everything. Mind is most powerful. And medical science till 1974 did not believe it. And when Dr. Eder of Rochester University conducted an experiment which shook the medical world, and when he said that immune system can be manipulated through mind. So since then, there is in every medical school and college, there is a department called psychoneuroimmunology, where the yoga is being treated to treat the diseases. On the basis of this as a mind-body medicine. And now the recent research is where the Candice, an American scientist, has got a Nobel Prize in 1990 for this discovery. She discovered the telemere. Telemere is a on our chromosomes, on the tip of the chromosome, there is a body called telomere, and the cell divides, so the chromosomes are divided. They keep on getting shorter. So telomere is a gene part on the top of the chromosome. So the length of the telomere decides who will age, who will live longer, who is will live shorter. Shorter the length of telomere, shorter the life. The longer the telomere, longer you will live, younger you are. Then Dr. Dean Ornish of Seattle and that lady conducted an operation, and on 30 yoga, they took a group of 30 people, and they conducted an experiment and found out that telemore's length depends on an enzyme called telemars. And the people who did yoga, the length of telemore was increased. The length of the telemore by increased by 33%. And that was an amazing discovery, directly telling us that by doing yoga, you can increase your lifespan.
Thank you so much, Atulji, for putting that reference. Also, I know that person very well, and I've studied his medical reports. There is a certain UN agency, and nowadays they are not very famous in the US, called World Health Organization, and I think they have promoted yoga in a big way in the past, and mainly because of uh, Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi's initiative of the World Yoga Day. And but this type of scientific approach to yoga and the importance of yoga has still not been promoted by WHO, and so this has remained a unresolved part. So one of the questions which comes from the viewers is why the World Health Organization is not coming behind fully behind yoga.
Honestly saying, it is all controlled by drug, medical, doctor mafia. I have worked very, I have, I mean, worked with many doctors abroad, and I was surprised that no big body is ready to take it. And even I have met the top executive CEOs of many drug companies. I don't want to take their names. One of the companies based in Switzerland, one, and I requested them to sponsor our research, which was not very costly, and so I just wanted their name so that and I will like to quote the name of the Pfizer company. Long back, when my mother was alive, they wanted to use her as an advertising model for their product, saying that Pfizer is the next best thing after yoga. But my mother refused. She said, I will not promote any medical company. I mean, it is long back before 2000 some years. So, but my point is that this is all commercialization, and nobody wants people to get cured, because then they will lose money. It's a huge money. You will not believe America's economy is more based on the pharmacy rather than arms and all. So, I'm sorry to say, but unfortunate, because the doctors and medicals hospital I'm ready to share with them the yogic perspective of every disease. For example, I tell you, I have written an article on cancer. The yogic perspective on the cancer is that when your blood become acidic, our blood is 30% acidic and 70% alkaline. If your blood becomes acidic, then your natural killer cells faint in that medium, and they are not able to act. And in that science, that in acidic medium only the cancer cells live and come and do their worst kind of a job. Basic yogic perspective I am giving. If you can keep your blood alkaline, I can trust you, I can assure you, you will never get cancer. Then we can talk of tonsillitis. The yogic perspective on tonsillitis is not tonsil. It is an indication that your blood is impure. If you purify your blood, tonsils will go. So, I mean, there are yogic perspective on diabetes, there are yogic perspective on asthma, on almost many. So, I am ready to share with the medical, but why don't you come and do the research on them? And if they are true, then why don't they take the yogic intervention along with the medicine? So, and this is amazing, to be honest. Yes. So,
in our next topic, we want to discuss yoga for cancer and diabetes, a separate topic for diabetes. But today you have given us such explosive, or I would say very revealing answers to so many audience, and there are a lot of questions coming up. So viewers, like for everything, we have to put it on like a popular soap opera. We have to put it on the next show. So let us put the next topic on the next show so that more people should join next time. And
So I can suggest your viewers can put the questions to me. I am ready to take questions from them. I would be very happy if you can make some session interactive with the viewers. That will be fantastic.
so we'll do a next session sometime next week, and viewers, you can watch it and you can come and ask those questions. But thank you, Atul Vyasji, for coming and enlightening us. You answered a lot of important questions, and for you, it's so natural to answer. It's really revealing. So thank you so much for coming, and viewers, thank you for watching, and keep watching. This show will be out on YouTube shortly, so you can comment over there and ask questions. Namaskar.
Thank you very much. Good night.